Have you ever been in a conversation where someone asked you a simple question and everything inside you froze, not because the question was hard to answer, but because something about it felt off? Maybe it sounded innocent on the surface, even sweet, yet deep down you knew there was a hidden game being played. Maybe you felt cornered, like you'd stepped into a trap you couldn't see, and before you knew it, you were defending yourself for things you didn't do, apologizing for feelings you didn't cause, or doubting your own mind. If that's ever happened to you, you're not alone. This video is about exposing those invisible traps, 5 simple questions that liars, manipulators, and toxic people use to control you without ever raising their voice or even lying outright. These questions are subtle, polished over thousands of years of human interaction, and they work because they target your deepest instincts. Your need to be fair, to be loved, to be trusted, to avoid conflict. And if you can't see them clearly, they will turn you into your own worst enemy. But here's the good news. Once you learn to recognize these 5 questions, you gain the power to flip the script. You stop being the pawn in someone else's game. You become the player. Instead of reacting with guilt or fear, you can respond with calm clarity. This isn't about fighting fire with fire. It's about becoming the still point in the storm, the person who sees through the fog and acts with reason, just like the Stoic philosophers taught 2,000 years ago. In this video, we'll break down each of these 5 questions in detail. You'll learn exactly why they work, how they trap you, and most importantly, how to respond like a Stoic so you stay calm, unshakable, and in control. By the end, you'll have practical tools you can use in your relationships, your workplace, and even with yourself, because sometimes the harshest manipulator lives inside our own minds. Before we dive in, I want to invite you to join this journey fully. If you find value in this message, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us reach more people who are struggling with manipulation, self-doubt, and emotional games. And if you'd like to take an extra step to support this work, consider using the Super Thanks button below to donate. Every contribution, no matter how small, fuels our mission to bring wisdom and clarity to a world full of noise. As you watch, keep an open mind. Notice which of these questions you've heard before. Think about how they've shaped your choices, your relationships, maybe even your identity. You might feel a little uncomfortable. That's normal. Growth always comes with discomfort, but stick with it, because on the other side of this discomfort is freedom. Imagine walking into your next difficult conversation and feeling centered no matter what's thrown at you. Imagine hearing one of these manipulative questions and smiling inside, because you know exactly what's happening and exactly how to respond. That's the power this knowledge gives you. So stay with me until the very end, because I promise you, once you see these questions for what they really are, you'll never be fooled by them again. Take a deep breath. Clear your mind. Let's step into the world of hidden manipulation together and shine a light on the shadows. By the time we're done, you'll see not only the lies around you, but also the strength within you. Now, let's begin. You're in a conversation with someone you care about or have to work with, and a soft question lands like a feather. Why are you being so sensitive? You chuckle to keep the peace. You explain yourself more than you should. And by the end of the day, you're replaying the moment, second-guessing your own perception. That's how manipulation usually starts, not with open conflict, but with a quiet nudge that pushes your attention away from the behavior in front of you and toward a flaw you're supposed to fix inside yourself. Liars don't only lie with statements, they lie with questions. A question can be a scalpel or a switchblade. If you accept its frame, you're already playing on their board, under their rules, with their scorekeeper. The fastest way to lose is to defend yourself inside a frame designed to make you look unreasonable. Here's the core problem. A manipulative question smuggles in an accusation and forces you to respond to the accusation instead of the facts. Why are you being so sensitive? Doesn't ask for information. It plants the idea that the real issue isn't a boundary crossed, a promise broken, or an inconsistency noticed. The issue is your feelings, your radar, your overreaction. Once you accept that framing, you will spend your energy proving you're not too sensitive rather than asking why the other person repeated a pattern, hid a message, changed a story, or moved a deadline. The same dynamic shows up everywhere. At a staff meeting where a budget line doesn't add up, and the response is, let's not overreact, it's just a rounding error. In a relationship where your partner's routine shifts suddenly and the response is, relax, you're imagining things. In a group chat where a friend's cutting joke lands too hard and you hear, come on, don't be so thin-skinned. The common thread isn't concern for your well-being. It's a subtle redirect that turns your awareness into a problem to be fixed. A Stoic approach cuts cleanly through this fog because it starts with the only leverage point you always control, your judgment. The practical side of Stoicism is not about suppressing emotions. It's about deciding what they mean and how you will respond. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly, if someone can show me I'm wrong, I'll gladly change. Because what I seek is truth, not victory. That line matters here because it teaches two moves at once. First, it anchors you to reality. If there's evidence you misread something, take it. Second, it rejects the emotional blackmail embedded in manipulative questions. If there isn't evidence, you're not obligated to surrender your perception just to keep the mood light. Sensitivity, in this light, is not fragility, it's signal detection. It's the dashboard light that flickers before the engine fails. Dismissing that signal is how small cracks become expensive collapses. If you've ever worked in finance, security, or QA, you know the rhythm. Someone raises a pattern numbers rounding the wrong way, logins from odd IPs at odd hours, a unit test that fails only on certain branches, and the first reply is social, not technical. Let's not be alarmist. Weeks later, the incident report reads like a slow-motion car crash, and the person who sounded the alarm looks sensitive only if we redefine sensitivity as willing to notice reality early. The same thing happens in ordinary life. A spouse who asks, "Why did your tone change when I mentioned that coworker?" isn't inventing drama. They're noticing a tiny deviation in behavior that, over time, often points to something concrete. A parent who says, "Our teenager is quieter than usual. Let's check in," isn't catastrophizing. They're respecting a signal that matters. Telling either one they're too sensitive is a way to make the signal go away without addressing the cause. Practically, what do you do the moment a question like that is thrown at you? Start by refusing the frame. A simple, clean line works. I'm not being sensitive. I'm being observant. You're naming what you're actually doing, observing specific facts, and placing the conversation back on the observable level. Follow it, if needed, with one short, neutral description. When X happened, this changed. I'm pointing that out. You're not escalating, you're clarifying. The tone matters. If you match heat with heat, you look like the caricature they're drawing. If you're flat and factual, you expose the tactic without theatrics. In sales negotiations, this sounds like, I'm flagging that the price sheet you sent on Tuesday doesn't match the terms we discussed last Friday. In a family conversation, it's, I'm noticing you've been guarding your phone at dinner this week. That's new. You're not psychoanalyzing motives. You're identifying a pattern and asking for alignment with reality. Another reason the Stoic stance helps is that it separates feelings from conclusions. You're allowed to feel stung, disappointed, or anxious. Feelings are data. What you don't do is let those feelings decide the meaning of the situation before you've tested the facts. Seneca's warning that we suffer more in imagination than in reality is a guardrail, not a muzzle. Use it to ask better questions. What exactly did I see or hear? What changed? What would count as good evidence that I'm wrong? What would count as good evidence that I'm right? In other words, shift from am I too sensitive to what is the smallest objective thing I can point to. That move keeps you from spiraling and keeps the other person from hiding behind labels. In workplace practice, that might mean opening the version history, pulling the last green build, checking the audit log, or pasting a screenshot. In personal life, it might mean recalling the exact statements and times rather than a hazy impression. Facts calm you and corner games. If the other person is acting in good faith, this approach invites collaboration. Someone who cares about truth We'll say, okay, show me what you saw, and you can test your read together. If they're not acting in good faith, you'll see a predictable pattern. Minimizing, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Pathologizing, you're paranoid. Or moral flipping, you're attacking me. Notice that all three avoid the facts. When that happens, you don't need to take the bait. You can repeat the fact once, ask for a direct answer, and crucially, set a boundary. If we can't address this directly, I'm going to pause this conversation until we can. Boundaries are Stoicism in action. They're not punishments. They're choices about what you will and won't participate in. You can be kind and firm at the same time. Let's make it concrete with common situations. You're a project. Stand up. You say, our ETA slipped 3 times this sprint. Can we surface the blockers openly? The lead laughs. Don't be so sensitive about estimates. You answer, I'm being observant. We slipped 3 times. Let's list blockers so we can remove them. Now you're back to reality. Number of slips, list of blockers, owners. Or you're talking to a friend who makes jokes at your expense in front of others. You say, I want you to stop. They reply, you're too sensitive. You answer, I'm observant. The jokes are about me, and they don't stop when I ask. I'm asking you directly to stop. You don't need a courtroom. You need a clear request. If they continue, you adjust your access. Fewer group events with that person, less time where the behavior can repeat. Not revenge, reality-based risk management. Some people worry that this posture turns them cold or unapproachable. It doesn't. Stoicism isn't a personality transplant. It's a method. You can remain warm, humorous, and generous while being ruthlessly honest about frames. Think of a good physician, compassionate bedside manner, firm commitment to diagnostic facts. No tolerance for magical thinking when a symptom points to something serious. You're doing the same thing with conversations. You refuse to let labels about your sensitivity overshadow data. You keep your voice level because you don't need volume when you have evidence. You make it easy for the other person to join you on the side of truth and very uncomfortable for them to stay in. Theater. There's also a tactical layer worth naming. Manipulative questions work because they compress time and force you to answer right now. The shock makes you fill the silence. Your best tool is the pause. 2 seconds of silence feels like an eternity when someone is fishing for your reaction. Use it. Count to 2, breathe, then answer with 1 sentence that resets the frame. In practice, that might sound like, I'm describing a specific behavior, not my personality, or let's focus on the event, not a label, or simply, here's what happened. If they keep pushing you into the label. Or, you can exit gracefully. When you're ready to discuss the behavior, I'm in. I won't debate my character. You're not storming out. You're declining an unproductive game. Documentation is another quiet power move. In organizations, it's normal tickets, PR comments, meeting notes. In personal life, it can feel odd, but a simple habit like writing down what happened right after a tough exchange keeps you anchored. Later, details blur, and you'll be tempted to accept you remembered that wrong. A brief time-stamped note date. Time, what was said protects your sanity. It also protects the relationship, because if you were mistaken, you will spot the mismatch yourself. You're not building a case file against people. You're building a reality file for yourself. It's important to say that sometimes you will be wrong. You will misread a tone, project a fear, connect dots that don't belong together. That's why the Stoic commitment to being corrected is non-negotiable. If the other person provides good evidence, clear logs, a conflicting receipt, a credible third-party account say, you're right, I misread that. That sentence is not defeat. It's maintenance for your instrument panel. People learn they can tell you the truth, and you will update. Ironically, being willing to be wrong makes your future observations carry more weight, not less. When manipulators cry, you're too sensitive, they count on your need to be right. Drop that need. Keep the need to be accurate. Now, about the fear of conflict. Most of us don't push back on manipulative questions because we're conflict averse, not because we can't see what's happening. We tell ourselves that letting a small thing slide keeps the peace. But what looks like peace is often a ceasefire that only one side respects. A single instance may not matter. Repeated patterns shape culture at home, on teams, among friends. If "don't be so sensitive" becomes the default, reply to legitimate concerns, people stop reporting early warnings. Teams learn to mask risk. Couples learn to walk on eggshells. Friends learn to bond over sarcasm at someone's expense. A Stoic doesn't rage at that drift. They mark it and correct course early. They set norms by modeling them. Ask for specificity, stay with facts, praise corrections, and end conversations that keep. Slipping into labels and guilt trips. A good test you can apply in real time is the swap test. Replace sensitive with observant in the other person's sentence and see if it still makes sense. Why are you being so observant? Sounds absurd because it exposes the tactic. Or make the request symmetric. I'll happily examine my tone. Will you examine your behavior with the same care? People who care about you will say yes. People who want control will dodge, mock, or escalate. Their reaction is your data. Treat it as such. All of this, taken together, builds a kind of inner ballast. You don't need to win arguments. You need to see clearly. You don't need to convince anyone you're not sensitive. You need to keep your instrument panel on. You don't need to expose every liar. You need to stop playing by their frames. The lines you use are simple on purpose. I'm being observant. Here's the specific behavior. Show me what I'm missing if we can't discuss the facts. I'm going to pause this because simple lines are easier to remember under pressure. They travel well from boardrooms to kitchens to text threads. They keep you polite, direct, and hard to manipulate. In the end, the most American, no-nonsense way to handle this is the most Stoic. Deal in specifics, set boundaries, stay calm, change your mind when shown better evidence, and refuse to debate your character with someone who won't discuss their behavior. The person who can do that is not brittle, they're resilient. They aren't too sensitive, they're properly calibrated. And in a world where people will always try to nudge you off center with a question that sounds innocent, calibration is what keeps you steady. When someone looks at you with a half smile and says, "Why are you being so sensitive?" it can feel like a harmless remark, maybe even a caring one. But beneath those 5 words lies one of the most subtle weapons of manipulation. On the surface, it sounds like they're just asking about your feelings. In reality, it's an accusation wrapped in the disguise of concern. What they're really saying is, the problem isn't what I did, the problem is you. You're weak, fragile, or imagining things. This tactic works because it shifts the spotlight away from their behavior and puts it squarely on your emotional state. Suddenly, instead of addressing the issue that made you speak up in the first place, you find yourself defending your right to even feel the way you do. It's like complaining about a leaky roof and being told, the real issue is your obsession with staying dry. The leak doesn't get fixed, and now you feel ashamed for noticing it. This move is especially dangerous because it strikes at the heart of your intuition. Humans have an inner radar, a kind of early warning system built from thousands of subtle cues. A change in tone, a shift in body language, a pattern that doesn't match past behavior. That radar is what keeps us safe in relationships, at work, and even on the street. When someone accuses you of being too sensitive, they're trying to disable that radar. They want you to doubt your own signals so they can keep acting without accountability. Once you start questioning whether your perceptions are valid, you're halfway to surrendering your boundaries. Instead of thinking, something feels off here, I should look closer, you start thinking, maybe I'm just overreacting. Maybe I should stay quiet. Take the workplace, for example. Imagine you're part of a project team, and you notice a small discrepancy in the financial reports. Maybe a number doesn't quite match last week's figures, or a payment was approved without the usual sign-off. You bring it up in a meeting, expecting a straightforward explanation. Instead, your manager laughs lightly and says, "Don't make a big deal out of it. You're being too sensitive about every little thing." Everyone else chuckles nervously, and the topic shifts. In that moment, the focus is no longer on the suspicious number. It's on you. You've been framed as the problem, the person who creates drama or slows things down. Weeks later, when a serious fraud scandal erupts, people will remember that you saw the signs first. But because you were shamed for your sensitivity, no one acted in time. Or consider a relationship scenario. You start to notice subtle changes in your partner's behavior. They guard their phone more closely, their schedule becomes inconsistent. Their tone shifts when a certain name comes up in conversation. When you bring it up gently, they smile and say, "You're overthinking again. You're so sensitive sometimes." Suddenly you're the one on trial, defending your feelings instead of discussing their actions. You walk away wondering if you're paranoid. Months later, when the truth comes out that they were hiding something all along you, remember that first conversation and wish you had trusted your instincts. This pattern shows up in friendships too. Maybe a friend makes jokes at your expense in front of others. You ask them to stop, and they roll their eyes. Relax, don't be so sensitive. The implication is that humor is harmless, and your discomfort is the real problem. Over time, you stop speaking up because you've been trained to believe that having boundaries makes you weak. In reality, boundaries are what keep relationships healthy. People who respect you will never mock you for expressing discomfort. Only those hiding something or unwilling to change need to undermine your perception. The Stoic philosophers understood this dynamic thousands of years ago. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Manipulators exploit this truth. They plant seeds of doubt in your imagination, and soon you start to suffer from stories you tell yourself. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm misunderstood. Maybe it's all in my head. That spiral is exactly what they want, because while you fight yourself internally, you stop questioning them externally. But here's the deeper Stoic insight. Sensitivity is not weakness. Sensitivity is awareness. It's the ability to detect small shifts before they become disasters. A skilled pilot pays attention to slight turbulence. A great doctor notices minor symptoms before disease progresses. In the same way, a sensitive person often sees the cracks in a relationship, a team, or a system long before anyone else does. Consider a famous example from the financial world. In the early 2000s, a junior analyst at a major firm noticed tiny inconsistencies in a client's accounting reports. When she raised concerns, her supervisors told her not to be so sensitive about the details, that she was overcomplicating things. But she persisted, quietly gathering data. Eventually, her findings exposed one of the largest corporate frauds in history. Think Enron-level scandal. The very trait mocked as sensitivity turned out to be the key to saving investors billions of dollars. The same pattern repeats in less dramatic settings every day. The nurse who notices a subtle change in a patient's condition, the teacher who picks up on a student's hidden distress, the friend who hears a false note in someone's story. Sensitivity is a radar system. Turning it off to please others is like disabling a smoke alarm because the beeping is inconvenient. So how do you respond when someone uses this weapon on you? The first rule is not to fight on their terms. If you get angry and defensive, you confirm their narrative. See, you are overreacting. If you explain at length why you're not sensitive, you're still playing their game. The Stoic move is simple, calm, and direct. Look them in the eye and say, "I'm not being sensitive. I'm being observant." Does that make you uncomfortable? This single sentence does three things at once. It rejects the false label they've tried to put on you. It reframes your awareness as a strength, not a flaw. And it subtly challenges them to confront why your observation might threaten them. You don't need to raise your voice or offer extra justification. The more matter-of-fact your tone, the more powerful the effect. Imagine this in practice. You're in a meeting and someone brushes off your concern with, "Don't be so sensitive." You take a slow breath, pause for 2 seconds, and respond evenly, "I'm being observant." Here are the 3 discrepancies I noticed. You stay with facts, not feelings. In a personal conversation, you might say, "I'm observing changes in your behavior. That's what I'm responding to." This approach shifts the burden back where it belongs on the behavior, not your reaction to it. Over time, people learn that you won't be gaslighted into silence. Of course, this doesn't mean every feeling you have is automatically accurate. Stoicism isn't about clinging to every impulse. It's about separating what's in your control, your judgments, your actions from what isn't. Like other people's choices or the ultimate outcome. When you feel hurt or uneasy, treat that feeling as a signal to gather more data, not as proof of guilt. Ask yourself, what exactly did I see or hear? What pattern changed? What evidence would confirm or disconfirm my impression? This keeps you grounded in reality. If the other person truly has nothing to hide, they'll welcome this clarity. If they're manipulative, they'll keep trying to shift the focus back to your sensitivity. Their reaction becomes part of your data. Another key tactic is to slow the tempo of the conversation. Manipulators thrive on urgency. They want you flustered and rushing to defend yourself. A simple pause, just 2 or 3 seconds of silence, can break their rhythm. It gives you time to breathe, observe, and choose your next move deliberately. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best answer to anger is silence. This doesn't mean passive acceptance. It means refusing to let someone else's frame dictate your speed or tone. In those few seconds of stillness, you reclaim your power. Let's return to our earlier relationship example. When your partner says, "You're just being sensitive," instead of jumping to explain, you pause. You let the words hang in the air. Then you calmly say, "I'm noticing specific changes. You've been more secretive with your phone, and your schedule has been inconsistent. Those are facts. My feelings are a response to those facts." Now the conversation is anchored in observable reality. If they continue to dismiss you, you have a clear choice. Stay in a dynamic where your perceptions are denied, or set boundaries to protect your peace. Either way, you're no longer trapped in the endless loop of self-doubt. Some people worry that responding this way will make them seem cold or confrontational. In truth, it's the opposite. When you speak calmly and clearly, without defensiveness, you create space for genuine dialogue. You show that you're open to being corrected if there's evidence you misread the situation. This is the heart of Stoic practice. Marcus Aurelius himself said, "If someone can show me my mistake and correct me, I will gladly change, for it is truth that I seek, not victory." When you live by this principle, you don't need to fear being called sensitive. You're willing to update your perspective, but only based on facts, not on someone else's discomfort. The deeper lesson here is that awareness is a gift, but it comes with responsibility. If you allow others to shame you out of noticing, you not only hurt yourself, you also deprive your community of early warnings. Think of all the disasters that could have been prevented if someone had listened to this sensitive person early on. Environmental crises spotted by scientists who were ignored, public health warnings dismissed as alarmist, cultural shifts overlooked until too late. Sensitivity is how progress begins. It's how danger is spotted before it's catastrophic. Treating it as a flaw is like punishing firefighters for smelling smoke. So the next time someone tries to use this weapon on you, remember, you don't have to fight, you don't have to explain, and you don't have to doubt yourself. You only have to stay rooted in observation. By calmly rejecting the false frame, you protect both your inner clarity and the outer truth. And in a world full of subtle manipulations, that clarity is your greatest shield. You trust me, right? It sounds gentle, almost innocent, like a line from a romantic movie or a comforting moment between close friends. But in real life, this question is rarely about love or trust. It's about control. When someone has to ask for trust instead of earning it, that's a red flag. A trustworthy person never needs to demand your faith. Their consistent actions speak louder than any words could. When someone looks you in the eye and says, "You trust me, right?" what they're really saying is, stop thinking. Stop asking questions. Hand me the keys to your mind and let me drive. It's a subtle command disguised as a question, designed to shut down your curiosity and make you feel guilty for wanting clarity. Real trust is quiet. It doesn't need constant reassurance because it's been proven over time through honesty, transparency, and follow-through. Think about the relationships in your life where trust is strong. You don't have to ask your best friend if they'll keep a secret because they always have. You don't have to remind a reliable coworker to finish their part of a project because they've demonstrated accountability again and again. Trust built this way is like a fortress, constructed brick by brick through consistent behavior. On the other hand, when someone says, "You trust me," right? It's often because the fortress is hollow and they're trying to cover the cracks with charm or pressure. In business, this trap shows up all the time. Imagine you're negotiating a deal with a partner who refuses to share critical financial information. You ask to see the numbers, and instead of transparency, they lean in and say, "Come on, you trust me, right? We've been working together for months." If you agree without proof, you've just handed them all the power. Later, when the numbers turn out to be fraudulent or the deal collapses, they'll claim you consented because you trusted them. Blind trust is the perfect environment for betrayal to grow. The same thing happens in romantic relationships. Picture someone who hides their phone, changes passwords, or gets defensive when you ask simple questions. When confronted, they don't offer reassurance through clarity. Instead, they flip the script. "Don't you trust me?" It's a trap. If you push for answers, you're painted as paranoid or controlling. If you back off, you're left in the dark, and their secrecy continues. Unchecked, this tactic works because it uses your own values against you. Most people want to see themselves as loyal and loving. When someone questions your trust, it triggers a deep fear of being seen as disloyal. You feel pressure to prove your love or commitment by staying silent. It's emotional blackmail. Stoic philosophy offers a powerful antidote here. Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." Manipulators understand this on a gut level. They want to freeze your curiosity so you stop gathering evidence and stop asking questions. The moment you accept their framing that doubt equals betrayal, you lose the ability to see clearly. But doubt is not betrayal. Doubt is wisdom. It's the mind's way of saying something doesn't add up. Look closer. Consider how dangerous blind faith can be in high-stakes situations. In 2008, the global financial crisis was fueled by people trusting institutions that didn't deserve it. Ratings agencies, banks, and CEOs told the public, "Everything is fine. Trust us." Few people questioned the complexity of mortgage-backed securities or demanded full transparency. The result was catastrophic. Billions lost, lives ruined, all because skepticism was treated like disloyalty. Now scale that down to your personal life. When someone says, "You trust me," right? Without offering proof, they're asking you to play a smaller version of that same game. A Stoic response doesn't mean paranoia or cynicism. It means calm, deliberate evaluation. When someone tries to force trust, pause, literally take a breath. This moment of stillness protects you from reacting emotionally. Then, respond with clarity. Trust is earned through consistency. Are you asking me to ignore my judgment? This simple sentence flips the dynamic. You're no longer defending yourself against their implied accusation. Instead, you're shining a light on their behavior. A person of integrity won't be offended by this. They'll continue to demonstrate reliability through their actions. But a manipulator will reveal themselves quickly. They may lash out, change the subject, but double down on guilt tactics. Whatever they do, their reaction gives you valuable information. There's a profound difference between trust that grows naturally and trust that's demanded. True trust is like a garden. You plant seeds through small, honest interactions. You water it with accountability and care. Over time, it blooms. Demanded trust is like a plastic plant. It looks convincing at first glance, but there's no life underneath. It never grows, and when pressure is applied, it shatters. Stoicism teaches us to discern between the two by focusing on what's within our control. You can't control whether someone is honest, but you can control whether you ignore evidence or suppress your instincts. By staying grounded in observation, you protect yourself without becoming bitter. Here's a personal story that illustrates this lesson. I once consulted on a tech project led by a charismatic executive. From day one, he discouraged detailed reporting. When team members asked for documentation or metrics, he'd smile and say, "Trust me, we need to stay agile, not bogged down in bureaucracy." At first, his confidence was inspiring. People wanted to believe in his vision. But as the months passed, deadlines slipped and key features vanished without explanation. Anyone who raised concerns was told they were slowing down innovation by asking too many questions. Eventually, the project collapsed under the weight of hidden problems. Millions were wasted, and many careers were damaged. Looking back, the warning signs were clear. The demand for trust was a smokescreen to avoid accountability. If the team had insisted on transparency early, they could have saved themselves enormous pain. This story isn't unique. Entire companies, families, and governments have fallen apart because people were pressured to equate trust with silence. In relationships, blind trust enables abuse to continue unchecked. In workplaces, it allows unethical leaders to exploit resources. In politics, it paves the way for corruption. The common thread is always the same. When questioning is framed as betrayal, truth dies in the dark. The Stoic approach, by contrast, values questioning as a path to wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about examining his own actions daily, not because he distrusted himself, but because he understood that clarity requires vigilance. When you practice Stoic detachment, you stop taking guilt trips personally. If someone says, "You don't trust me," you don't rush to reassure them. You pause and evaluate. Maybe they truly deserve trust, and your doubt comes from your own fears. Or maybe their defensiveness is a sign they're hiding something. Either way, you respond from a place of calm reasoning, not emotional manipulation. You can even say, "I want to trust you, and I also want to verify." Those two things are not opposites. This reframes the conversation. Healthy people will respect this balance. Unhealthy people will see it as a threat. In everyday life, you can apply this mindset in small ways. If a friend borrows money and says, "You trust me, right?" you can respond, "I trust you, and I also keep agreements clear for both our sakes." Let's write down the terms. If a colleague hides data behind "trust me," you can say, "I trust your intentions. Let's make sure the numbers are accurate so we both succeed." These responses are polite but firm. They separate trust from blind obedience. Over time, this builds relationships based on reality, not illusion. The real danger of the question, "You trust me, right?" is that it tempts you to abandon your most valuable asset, your judgment. Once you silence that inner voice, you become easy to control. A Stoic never surrenders this inner fortress. Even in the face of love, pressure, or fear, they hold to what they know is true. Trust given freely and thoughtfully is a beautiful thing. But trust demanded is a warning sign. When you feel that pressure, take a breath, step back, and remember, your clarity matters more than someone else's comfort. In the end, those who truly deserve your trust will never need to ask for it. They'll simply live in a way that makes it obvious. "Are you accusing me of something?" is a line that looks like a question but behaves like a trap. It flips the roles in an instant. You're no longer the person trying to clarify a concern. You're suddenly the defendant in a courtroom you didn't agree to enter, with a judge who just slammed the gavel and announced the charge. That flip is the point. Instead of discussing the behavior you noticed, missing money, inconsistent stories, a changed password, a deadline that quietly moved the conversation shifts to your supposed aggression. You're pushed to prove that you're not attacking them, that you're not unreasonable, that you're not that kind of person. In other words, you're forced onto defense before any facts are examined. And if you accept that frame, you've already lost the round. The tactic works because it exploits social pressure and your own desire to be fair. Most people don't want to be seen as accusatory, dramatic, or cruel. When someone says, "Are you accusing me?" their tone carries moral outrage, and outrage is contagious. It makes you flinch. You rush to reassure. No, that's not what I meant." You soften your words. You start talking about your feelings instead of the facts. "I just felt uneasy." The subject quietly changes from the observed behavior to your tone, your choice of words, your timing. The underlying issue gets buried under etiquette. The person who used the line knows this. They've moved the debate from evidence to optics, from substance to style. You'll see this play out in family life with money all the time. You look at the shared bank account and notice a sequence of charges that don't match what you both agreed on. You ask, "Hey, can we go over these expenses?" And the reply comes back sharp. "Are you accusing me of hiding purchases?" Instantly, you're tempted to scramble. "I would never accuse you. I just wanted to understand." The conversation turns into a negotiation over your intent, not their behavior. Or think about a teenager whose location history doesn't line up with the story they told. You say, "Your map shows you were across town last night." And they shoot back, "So, I'm a liar now?" The heat rises, and suddenly you're debating whether you trust them rather than looking at the clear mismatch between words and data. Workplaces are full of this move. You raise a question about metrics that jumped without a plausible cause, and a manager responds, "Are you questioning my competence?" A teammate force pushes to main and breaks the build. You ask why the review process was bypassed, and they snap, "Are you accusing me of being careless?" The goal is the same in both cases. Drag the conversation to your alleged disrespect and away from the decision that needs accountability. Even outside offices and homes, the pattern holds. A contractor misses milestones. You ask to see progress. They say, "Do you think I'm scamming you?" A friend repeats a confidential story. You bring it up. They say, "Are you calling me a bad person?" The question isn't meant to invite clarity. It's meant to shame you out of pressing for it. A Stoic approach keeps you from stepping into that shame spiral. Marcus Aurelius said the best answer to anger is silence. And silence here doesn't mean surrender. It means you refuse to match their pace or accept their frame. The micro skill is a 2 to 3 second pause. It breaks the momentum. It gives your nervous system a chance to drop out of fight or flight and back into judgment. After the pause, you don't fill the air with apologies or explanations. You simply return the focus to the observable. One clean line is enough. "Should I be?" Delivered calmly. It places the weight where it belongs on whether the facts justify concern. If you want a slightly longer version, you can say, "I'm not accusing. I'm asking a question based on these specifics." Then list the specifics, briefly and concretely. "We agreed to cap discretionary spending at $500. There are 3 charges over that. Help me understand." Or, "The build failed after a force push to main. I want to understand why the review steps were skipped." Notice what you're doing there. You're separating intent from observation. You're not assigning motives or reading minds. You're naming facts. That distinction is powerful because it denies the other person the fog they need to hide in. When someone wants to manipulate, they drag you into a fight over character, yours or theirs, because character fights are fuzzy and endless. When you choose observation, you shorten the path. Here's what happened. Here's the question it raises. Here's the next step to verify. You also signal that you're open to being corrected by evidence, which makes it harder for them to frame you as hostile. A simple line, "If I'm missing something, show me, and I'll update," keeps you both anchored to reality. It disarms good faith people and exposes bad faith ones. There are a few telltale signs you're dealing with the role reversal move. There's speed. The reply comes fast and hot, designed to put you back on your heels. There's volume or intensity, moral indignation out of proportion with your question. There's a sudden shift to absolutes and binaries. "So, I'm the villain now? So, I'm never allowed to make a mistake?" There's changing the standard midstream. They demand proof at a level that no ordinary conversation could meet, not because they want the truth, but because they want the question to die. Once you see those signals, you can run a simple internal script. Pause, separate, restate, redirect. Pause for 2 beats. Separate observation from accusation in your own head. Restate the observation in neutral words. Redirect to verification or next steps. This isn't an abstract skill. It's a muscle you can practice in low-stakes moments, so it's ready for high-stakes ones. Try it at the coffee shop when an order is wrong and the barista hears you as hostile. Not accusing, just letting you know this was made with dairy. I ordered oat. Try it in group texts when a friend reads your suggestion as criticism. Not an accusation, here's the screenshot of the time conflict. The more you practice this stance, the more natural it becomes to hold ground without heat. You don't need to win by force. You win by refusing to leave the terrain of facts. A story from Finance Review makes the mechanics clear. A company's internal audit team noticed vendor invoices creeping up in a pattern that didn't match the contract's pricing tiers. In the first meeting, the operations lead cut them off. "Are you accusing my team of fraud?" The room went quiet. Instead of retreating, the audit lead paused, opened a printed page, and said evenly, "I'm not accusing anyone. I'm pointing to row 312, 326, and 341, where the per-unit price jumped 18% without a corresponding tier change. If there's an amendment we don't have, show it and we'll update." That was it. No lectures, no sarcasm. Facts, an invitation, and a clear next step. Within a week, the vendor admitted to billing errors. The operations lead later thanked the auditors for not escalating the conflict, and the process was fixed. The punchline is important. The calm posture didn't humiliate anyone, and it didn't ignore the problem. It put pressure on the right place, the discrepancy, and allowed the truth to surface without theater. You can adapt this to family conversations without sounding like a spreadsheet. "Are you accusing me of hiding purchases?" becomes, "I'm looking at 3 charges we didn't budget for. If I missed a conversation about them, tell me when we decided. If the heat comes back, so I can't spend anything now, you don't chase the new frame. We can talk about changing the budget later. Right now I'm asking about these specific charges. If they still refuse to engage the specifics, you set a boundary. If we can't go over the numbers calmly, I'm going to pause this and we'll schedule a time to review with statements. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're choices about the conditions required for a real conversation. They also prevent you from saying things you'll regret just to break the stalemate. In relationships, the same choreography applies with different words. "Are you accusing me of cheating?" is designed to shut you up with shame and force you to apologize for even noticing. Don't swing at the pitch. I'm not assigning motives. I'm naming what changed. You started keeping your phone face down, your schedule shifted, and you stopped sharing small details you used to share. If there's a benign reason, I want to hear it. If they answer with more heat instead of clarity, you've learned something important. You didn't get the confession you might have wanted, but you got data about the health of the dynamic. You can use that data to decide your next step without turning the evening into a shouting match. One useful micro phrase is "help me understand," but use it with a spine. "Help me understand," followed by softening and nervous laughs invites. Steamrolling. "Help me understand." The repo shows a force push at 2:14 p.m. that removed the failing test. What was the reasoning? Is specific. It isn't mean, it's anchored. If the person responds, "So, I'm a bad engineer now," you repeat the anchor, "I didn't say that. I'm asking about the force push." People who want to avoid accountability will try to drag you into a debate about labels bad. Engineer, overbearing manager, untrusting partner. Don't debate labels. Keep asking about actions. Another practical tool is to write down the question you asked and the answer you received. In meetings, that's normal minutes. At home, it could be a note on your phone. This isn't building a case to win later. It's a way to keep yourself honest and calm. Memory is slippery, and manipulative people count on that. With a written record, you can avoid relitigating what was said and stick to what remains unresolved. It also helps you see patterns over time. If every attempt to discuss a concrete issue is met with "Are you accusing me?" you're not in a random misunderstanding. You're in a system designed to make problems untouchable. There's also a kindness baked into the Stoic stance that gets overlooked. By refusing to accuse and insisting on discussing observations, you give the other person a face, saving on a ramp to the truth. Many people double down on defensiveness because they feel cornered. When you say, "If I'm missing something, show me," you offer a way out that doesn't require them to confess to being a villain. It only requires them to supply the missing context or to admit a mistake. That's how healthy teams and relationships repair. Not through dramatic confessions, but through small acknowledgments that nudge reality back into view. Of course, sometimes there is willful deception. In those cases, the line "should I be" does more than reframe. It tests. It tells the other person you're not afraid of the answer. You're signaling, without theatrics, that if the facts justify concern, you'll act accordingly. That quiet resolve is more powerful than any angry speech. People who are lying often bank on your fear of being the bad guy. When you demonstrate that you'll take appropriate action if necessary and that you won't be guilt-tripped out of it, you change the incentives around you. Some will get honest. Some will leave. Either outcome is better than living inside a narrative you don't control. If you need a compact template to carry with you, use this: observe, ask, pause, and, if needed, boundary. Observe. Name the specific behavior, time, and impact. Ask. Invite clarification without assigning motive. Pause. Give space for a real answer. Boundary. If the answer is an attack on your character instead of an address of the facts. In the loop, and set conditions for continuing. Each step is small, but together they keep you from being dragged into the role of the accuser when all you did was point to reality. The last move to master is resisting the urge to over-explain. Over-explaining is often a plea to be seen as a good person. You don't need to submit a character essay to earn the right to ask about facts. 2 or 3 sentences are enough. Then stop. Let the silence do its work. If the other person fills it with more accusations about your intent, don't chase them. If they fill it with information that resolves the issue, thank them and move on. In both cases, you've kept control of what you can control: your attention, your tone, your commitment to truth over theater. Are you accusing me of something? Will keep showing up in your life because it's efficient. It shuts down tough conversations with one sharp line. But once you learn to see it and to meet it with calm observation instead of panic, you stop being an easy target for role reversals. You don't have to be loud to be unmovable. A 2-second pause, a single question, "should I be?" and a return to the facts is enough to turn the shield back into a mirror. "Would I ever lie to you?" is a question that at first sounds tender, even wounded. It's delivered with wide eyes, a soft tone, maybe even a dramatic pause meant to make you feel like you've just crossed a line by doubting them. On the surface, it seems like they're asking for reassurance, but beneath the surface, it's pure theater. This isn't about clarifying truth. It's about shifting the emotional balance of power. The person asking this question is not really looking for an answer. They're performing innocence. They're trying to make you feel guilty for even having a question. The subtext is clear. How dare you suspect me? Your doubt is cruel, and now you must comfort me. Once you fall into that script, the conversation is no longer about whether they lied. It's about you proving that you're a good, trusting person. This tactic works because most people don't want to hurt those they care about. When someone you love looks hurt, your instinct is to fix it. They know this. That's why manipulative individuals use exaggerated displays of emotion at exactly the moment you're close to uncovering the truth. It's like a magician's smoke bomb designed to distract you from what's really happening. In that moment, you're no longer thinking about the evidence you've seen. You're thinking about how terrible it feels to be the bad guy who questioned them. And that's exactly where they want you, off balance, full of guilt, and too busy apologizing to press for answers. Think about common real-world situations. In a romantic relationship, maybe you've noticed your partner behaving oddly, suddenly guarding their phone, staying out later than usual, or becoming vague about where they've been. You finally muster the courage to bring it up. "I've noticed some changes lately, and I need to ask if there's something going on." Instead of addressing the behavior, they clutch their chest like you just stabbed them. "Would I ever lie to you? After everything we've been through?" Now you're caught in a performance. If you back down, they've successfully avoided the question. If you keep pushing, they'll escalate the guilt, maybe even crying or accusing you of destroying the relationship with your distrust. The original issue, the behavior, vanishes in the fog of drama. The same tactic appears in workplaces. Imagine you're on a team where deadlines keep slipping, but no one will explain why. You bring your concerns to a manager. Instead of transparency, they lean back and sigh deeply. Would I ever mislead this team? You know how hard I work for all of you. Suddenly, the meeting is about loyalty, not accountability. The actual data, the missed milestones, the broken processes, those are buried under a story about how you've wounded their pride. This move is especially common in hierarchical organizations where questioning a superior is already risky. It leverages social dynamics to silence investigation. The Stoic approach to this situation is brutally simple. You don't argue about whether they would lie. That's a hypothetical, and hypotheticals are endless. Instead, you return to what can be known. The calm, clear response is, that's not the question. The question is, what I know if you did. Those words cut through the performance like a blade. They shift the focus from their feelings to the reality of evidence and transparency. It doesn't matter whether someone claims they'd never lie. What matters is whether there's systems in place, shared passwords, open communication, visible processes that would make lying difficult or impossible. This answer also subtly communicates that you won't be manipulated into abandoning logic. You care about facts, not flattery. Delivering this line well requires composure. If you sound angry or sarcastic, they'll grab onto your tone as proof that you're the problem. The power comes from calmness. Think of a doctor giving a diagnosis. Steady, neutral, factual. In practice, this might sound like, that's not the question. The question is, would I know if there was a problem? Right now, I don't have enough clarity to feel secure. You've now reframed the issue. If they're acting in good faith, they'll respond by increasing transparency. If they lash out or try to deepen the guilt trip, you've learned something important about their motives. Now, let's talk about the final weapon in the manipulator's arsenal. Can't we just move on? This line usually appears when every other tactic has failed. You've seen through the false concern of why. Are you being so sensitive? You didn't fall for the forced loyalty of you trust me, right? You resisted the role reversal of are you accusing me and the performance of would I ever lie to you? At this point, they're out of clever tricks, so they turn to exhaustion. The strategy is simple. Wear you down until you give up. Can't we just move on? Sounds like a call for peace. It wears the costume of reconciliation. But look closely. It's not about healing or resolution. It's about escape. What they're really saying is, I don't want accountability. I don't want to face the truth. I just need you too tired to keep asking questions. This is why so many lies survive, not because the liar outsmarts everyone, but because the truth seeker grows weary. Investigating takes energy. Conflict takes energy. When you're tired, it's tempting to say, fine, let's just forget it. That moment of fatigue is their victory. Consider how often we hear this line in public scandals. A company gets caught engaging in unethical practices, polluting, defrauding investors, mistreating workers. At first, there's outrage. People demand answers. The leadership responds with a carefully worded statement. Let's not dwell on the past. Let's focus on moving forward together. It sounds inspiring, but what it really means is stop digging. Stop holding us accountable. If the public accepts this, the root causes of the scandal remain untouched and the cycle repeats. The same pattern happens in personal relationships. A partner is caught in a betrayal, cheating, lying, hiding debts. After the initial confrontation, they say, why keep talking about it? Let's just move on. They're not offering genuine reconciliation. They're asking for silence. They want you to bury the issue so they can avoid the discomfort of truly facing it. Stoic philosophy offers a different definition of moving on. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Notice what's missing. There's no clause that says, unless it's inconvenient. For a Stoic, truth has no expiration date. It doesn't fade just because someone wants to forget. Moving on is only possible once the truth has been faced and integrated. Otherwise, you're not moving on. You're running away. The proper response to can't we just move on is steady and unyielding. I'll move on when I understand what happened, not before. This line anchors you in reality. It communicates that your peace is built on clarity, not fatigue. It also places the responsibility where it belongs. If they want the conversation to end, they need to provide answers, not distractions. Like all Stoic techniques, the key is calm delivery. You're not yelling. You're not making threats. You're simply stating a boundary. You will not participate in false closure. In practical terms, this might look like a couple dealing with infidelity. The betrayed partner says, I need to understand why this happened and what steps we'll take to prevent it in the future. The unfaithful partner replies, why keep bringing it up? Can't we just move on and be happy? If the betrayed partner caves, the relationship will be built on a fault line. Resentment will fester. But if they calmly hold their ground, we move on after we face the truth. There's at least a chance for genuine healing. Similarly, in a workplace, if a project fails due to hidden mismanagement, leadership might say, let's not assign blame. Let's look ahead. The team can respond, we're ready to move forward, but only after we've identified what went wrong so it doesn't happen again. This isn't vindictive, it's responsible. Manipulators hate this stance because it robs them of their last refuge. When guilt doesn't work and exhaustion doesn't work, they have nothing left. They may try to escalate, accusing you of being obsessed or negative. Stay calm. Repeat your line if necessary. I'll move on when I understand what happened. Like a broken record, it reminds both of you that truth is non-negotiable. Over time, this clarity wears them down instead of the other way around. It's worth noting that not everyone who says, can't we just move on, is malicious. Sometimes people genuinely want to avoid pain. They may feel ashamed or overwhelmed. In these cases, you can show compassion while holding boundaries. You might say, I know this is hard to talk about. I want peace too. But peace built on silence isn't real. Let's go step by step. This combines empathy with firmness. It gives them a path to honesty without letting the issue slide into the shadows. Both of these final questions, would I ever lie to you? And can't we just move on? Are last-ditch efforts to derail accountability. One uses drama, the other uses fatigue. They often appear together. First, the person performs innocence to make you feel cruel for doubting. When that fails, they plead for closure to make you stop digging. Recognizing this pattern is half the battle. Once you see it, you can prepare your mind the way a Stoic warrior prepares for battle. Calm, alert, focused on what you control. You can't force someone to tell the truth. You can't erase their lies, but you can control whether you're manipulated into silence. Examples abound in everyday life. Think about a sports scandal where a beloved athlete is caught cheating. At first, they tearfully insist, I would never lie to my fans. Later, when evidence mounts, they say, let's move past this and focus on the future. Or consider a political leader exposed for corruption. Their initial response is righteous indignation. How dare you accuse me? When documents surface, the tone shifts to, we need to move on for the good of the nation. In both cases, the sequence is predictable. Deny with emotion, then demand closure. The public often plays along because confronting the truth is uncomfortable. But Stoic wisdom reminds us that discomfort is temporary. The damage caused by buried lies lasts much longer. Even in personal relationships, you'll see the same script. A friend who repeatedly cancels plans at the last minute might say, would I ever flake on you? You know I value our friendship. When you keep noticing the pattern, they finally say, why keep bringing this up? Let's just enjoy our time together. If you let these lines go unchallenged, resentment builds until the friendship dis. But if you calmly state, I need reliability in my friendships, we can move forward once we've talked about why this keeps happening. You give the relationship a chance to survive. Honestly, these moments require courage. It's easier to accept the performance, to say it's fine, to move on superficially. But ease is not the same as peace. Stoicism teaches that true peace comes from aligning your actions with reality. When you refuse to be swayed by drama or exhaustion, you reclaim your inner stability. You become the still point in the storm. The manipulator's greatest weapon is your reaction. If you don't give it to them, their performance falls flat. Without an audience, the play ends. In the end, these two questions are like the closing moves of a chess game. Would I ever lie to you? Is a flashy sacrifice, hoping to confuse you into abandoning your strategy. Can't we just move on? Is a desperate attempt to run out the clock. But if you stay calm, keep asking for clarity, and refuse to surrender your reason, you win by default. Not because you checkmate them, but because you refuse to be a pawn. Your life, your relationships, your decisions, they remain yours. And no manipulative question can take that away unless you hand it over. Life is full of conversations that seem ordinary on the surface, but are actually psychological chess matches. The 5 questions we've explored are not random words, they are deliberate moves on a mental chessboard, each designed to knock you off balance, to push you into a role where you doubt yourself and surrender control. Why are you being so sensitive? Attacks your awareness, convincing you to see your natural radar for danger as a weakness. You trust me, right? Demands blind faith, shutting down your judgment and silencing your questions. Are you accusing me of something? Flips the roles, turning you into the aggressor so they can play the victim. Would I ever lie to you? Is pure theater, a performance meant to trigger guilt and make you apologize for even suspecting deception. And finally, can't we just move on? Is the desperation play, an attempt to exhaust you into silence when all other tactics have failed. When you don't see these moves clearly, you become a pawn, reacting instead of responding. You spend your energy defending yourself, apologizing, second-guessing, and trying to keep the peace at any cost. But once you learn to recognize the pattern, the entire game changes. You stop being the pawn. You become the player. Each question becomes predictable. And because it's predictable, it's manageable. When someone tries to shame you for noticing a problem, you remember that sensitivity is awareness, not weakness. And you calmly affirm what you've observed. When they demand trust instead of earning it, you know that real trust is built on consistent actions, not pressure or guilt, and you set clear boundaries. When they flip the script and accuse you of being accusatory, you don't rush to defend yourself. You pause, breathe, and redirect the focus back to the facts. When they put on a dramatic performance of innocence, you don't play along. You return to what can be verified. Would I know if you did? And when they plead for you to just move on, you hold steady. We move forward after the truth is faced, not before. The Stoic approach doesn't require shouting, confrontation, or revenge. A Stoic doesn't need to win an argument or crush the other person. That would mean letting their behavior control you just as much as their questions once did. Instead, a Stoic cultivates stillness. They become like a rock in the river. The water flows around them, but they are unmoved. They observe, they understand, and then they choose their response deliberately. This is why Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the power of reasoned action. When you act from clarity instead of emotion, no manipulator can reach you. They may still try to play their games, but the game no longer works. Their words become noise, and noise cannot hurt you unless you amplify it inside your own mind. Think about how this looks in real life. Imagine a heated workplace meeting. A project has gone off track, deadlines have been missed, and everyone is scrambling to assign blame. The manipulator plays their first move. Why are you being so sensitive? You don't take the bait. You state the facts clearly and calmly. Here are the missed milestones and the impact they've had. They try their second move. You trust me, right? You don't surrender your judgment. I trust consistent actions. Let's review the data together. They escalate. Are you accusing me of something? You pause for 3 seconds, then reply evenly, should I be? Let's focus on what we can verify. Finally, when all else fails, they sigh and say, can't we just move on? You end it with clarity. We'll move on after we understand what happened. Throughout this exchange, you never raise your voice. You never insulted them. You never lost your center. That is what strength looks like. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's steady. The deeper truth here is that manipulators don't thrive on facts or logic. They thrive on your emotional reactions. They need you to feel guilty, ashamed, afraid, or exhausted. Without those emotions, their tactics collapse. This is why Stoic thinking is so effective. Stoicism teaches that the only thing truly under your control is your own mind, your thoughts, your choices, your actions. You cannot control whether someone lies to you, but you can control whether you believe the lie. You cannot stop someone from trying to manipulate you, but you can stop yourself from reacting the way they want. When you master that inner domain, external games lose their power. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Manipulative people know this intuitively. They plant seeds of doubt and fear in your imagination, and then they wait while you water those seeds with your own thoughts. Soon, you're battling yourself. They don't have to lift a finger. The cure is clarity. Clarity comes from staying present with what is actually happening instead of getting lost in what might happen. It comes from observing patterns without labeling yourself as weak or cruel for noticing them. It comes from asking, is this within my control or outside of it? If it's outside your control, you let it go. If it's within your control, you act calmly and decisively. Imagine a person who lived for years under the spell of manipulation. At home, their partner used every one of these questions to keep them off balance. At work, their boss relied on guilt and fear to maintain power. Over time, this person shrank. They doubted their own perceptions. They apologized constantly. They felt like they were walking on eggshells in every conversation. Then one day, they discovered Stoic philosophy. They read Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca. They learned that they didn't have to control other people to be free. They only had to control themselves. Slowly, they began to change. The next time their partner said, "Why are you being so sensitive?" they replied, calm and steady, "I'm being observant." The next time their boss demanded blind trust, they said, "Trust is earned through consistent actions." When accusations came, they paused instead of panicking. When guilt trips arrived, they stayed silent instead of defending themselves. At first, the manipulators escalated, confused by the shift. But eventually, they gave up. Without the emotional fuel, their tactics no longer worked. This person didn't just survive manipulation, they transcended it. They became a model of calm strength for others around them. That story is not a fantasy. It's a choice anyone can make. You don't need special skills or perfect circumstances. You need awareness, practice, and patience. Every time you resist the urge to react, you grow stronger. Every time you pause instead of rushing to defend yourself, you reclaim a little more of your power. Over weeks and months, those small choices add up. You become someone who cannot be easily pushed. Someone who sees through the games. Someone who radiates quiet authority. These 5 questions will keep showing up in your life because manipulation is as old as humanity. But now, you have the tools to recognize them. When you hear, "Why are you being so sensitive?" you know they're trying to disarm your radar. When you hear, "You trust me, right?" you know they want obedience, not relationship. When you hear, "Are you accusing me of something?" you know they're trying to flip the frame. When you hear, "Would I ever lie to you?" you know they're performing guilt, not truth. And when you hear, "Can't we just move on?" you know they're asking for silence, not healing. Each time, you can choose to respond like a Stoic. Calm, clear, unshakable. You don't need to fight every battle. You don't need to convince everyone to see what you see. Sometimes the most powerful move is simply to see clearly and act accordingly. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Keep your thoughts aligned with reality, and you will be free no matter what others say or do. If this message resonates with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs it, someone who may be trapped in a web of subtle questions and silent suffering. Leave a simple comment as a declaration of your own clarity. I choose clarity. Those 3 words are more than a slogan. They're a promise to yourself. A promise to stop being a pawn in someone else's game. A promise to live as a player, not a victim. Picture yourself standing in the middle of a storm. The winds of manipulation howl around you. Questions fly like debris, sharp and fast. In the past, You might have been knocked down, tossed about by every gust. But now you are still. You watch the storm with steady eyes. You see each question for what it is: a move, a tactic, a test. You don't rage against it. You don't run from it. You simply remain calm, observant, unshakable. In that stillness, you find your true power, the power to live free, no matter what games others play. And that, in the end, is what it means to be a Stoic warrior in a world of shadows. You've now seen the 5 most dangerous questions that liars and manipulators use to twist your perception and control your reactions. You've seen how a soft, seemingly harmless question like, "Why are you being so sensitive?" can make you doubt your own awareness. How you trust me, right? Turns healthy caution into guilt. How are you accusing me of something? Flips the frame and makes you defend yourself instead of the truth. How would I ever lie to you? Uses drama to hide deceit. And finally, how can't we just move on? Weaponizes your exhaustion to bury unresolved pain. These questions are like 5 pieces on a chessboard. When you don't know the game, you're just a pawn, moving blindly, reacting emotionally. But now, you're no longer a pawn. You're a player. You can see the moves coming. You can respond with strength, with calmness, with strategy. This doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. It means becoming wise. It means protecting your mind and your heart from those who would exploit them. Remember, the Stoic response is never about shouting or retaliating. A Stoic doesn't need to prove themselves through noise. They stay silent when silence is powerful. They speak when words are needed. They observe, they think, and they act with precision. When someone tries to bait you into chaos, you remain the calm center of the storm. When someone tries to cloud you with guilt or fear, you return to what you know is real: your values, your reason, your clarity. Imagine what your life will feel like when you master this. Picture yourself in a tense meeting, at a family dinner, or in a heated argument with a partner. Instead of your pulse racing and your mind spinning, you breathe. You see the question for what it is: a tactic, not the truth. You respond with grace and strength. And because you don't give the reaction they want, their entire strategy falls apart. That's the freedom you've been seeking, not freedom from other people's words, but freedom from their hold over your mind. If this message has spoken to you, don't keep it to yourself. There are people out there right now who are stuck in cycles of manipulation and self-doubt. People who need to hear that they're not weak, they're not crazy, they're simply caught in someone else's game. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs clarity. And if you want to go further in supporting this work, please consider using this super thanks button to donate. Every act of support allows us to create more content, reach more people, and keep spreading this life-changing wisdom. In the comments below, I want you to declare your choice. Write 3 simple words: I choose clarity. These words are a commitment to yourself, a promise that from this day forward, you will not be controlled by subtle questions or shadow games. You will live with open eyes, a steady heart, and an unshakable mind. The world is full of noise and manipulation, but you don't have to live in the dark. You have the tools now. You have the knowledge. All that's left is the choice to use it. So step boldly into the light. Be the calm observer. Be the player, not the pawn. And walk forward in truth, knowing that no question, no matter how clever, can shake you again. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for walking this path with me. I believe in your strength, and I can't wait to see what clarity you create in your own life. Until next time, stay calm, stay strong, and never stop seeking the truth.